It was a very special day for Grayson the other day because he woke up no longer 5 3/4, but a whole 6 years old. We decided to keep things simple this year and we just went out for a pizza with his younger brother Rufus and 2 of his best friends from school. And he loved it. They all just ran around chasing imaginary monsters and imaginary criminals and swinging on rope swings and just being 6-year-olds. It reminded me of the curiosity you have at 6 years old and the imagination that you have and the spontaneity and the ability to warp time. I think that's the thing I miss most about being a kid is not having a concept of time or how time works. And when I look back at being 6 and I think about it, I remember those years so fondly. I think they were some of the best years of my life. So it gave me an idea. I thought we could go back there, to the time when I was 6, and tell you that story. The story I'm going to tell you doesn't have a happy ending, but it has an ending that I'm happy with, if that makes any sense. So here's my idea. Let's go back there. This is my mum and dad's wedding day. They got married in Guildford Registry Office in May of 1980. It was one of those perfectly cloudless blue sky days, and I was there too, sort of. I was still cooking inside my mum. My pregnant Irish mum and my half Polish and half Dutch dad had just found themselves inside their new bubble, and they loved it. They loved its endless potential, because inside it they were happy, happier than they'd ever been in their lives. 5 months after the wedding, I decided to show up. This is me here. My mum and dad used to call me Mr. Magoo after this guy. 18 months after I was born, out came my sister Katie. Now, I wasn't sure about Katie at first. She was always quite the attention seeker, and I hated it not being about me, so I used to push her over quite a lot. Sure, there were cracks in my mum and dad's marriage, but every marriage has a few cracks here and there. When I look back, I remember swimming in this old Victorian swimming pool. I remember playing on my dad's motorbikes and cleaning our old car we used to call Zoom Zoom for pocket money and swinging on a rope swing at the bottom of our garden. Everything was just so simple, and it just felt like this was how it was always going to be. And none of us thought it was ever going to end. All bubbles have something in common. Eventually they'll burst. And this is when the story changes. As the years passed, those small cracks in my mum and dad's marriage grew larger and larger. And there were now crevasses that they couldn't navigate around. They argued more and more, the arguments got more and more intense, and eventually they decided to separate, and then later divorce. I was about 9 years old when it all happened. The divorce wasn't easy on any of us. Suddenly, a huge chapter of our lives was over, and everything was in flux, and suddenly there seemed to be this vacuum that was created out of it. The vacuum was filled with blame and anger and grief. And grief has this way of blazing a trail that can last for years. Things for all of us fell apart. The house we lived in was given to us to live in as part of my dad's job, so when he moved out, we had to move out. We needed somewhere to live, so the council gave us some keys to a dingy flat that somebody had died in. And obviously, the person hadn't been found in some time, so the smell of death was inescapable. No matter how long you left the windows open or how much air freshener you sprayed, it was always there. Just this cold, heavy and putrid, dense smell that lay like a thick blanket over every inch of the flat. I used to dread going back to it after school. After a few months in that dingy death flat, we were moved into a bright yellow mobile home that the council told us would be temporary, only for 2 months while they found us something more permanent. Life couldn't be more different now, and I was different because of it. In a way, I guess I felt more awakened. Anyway, it ended up not being very temporary, and after 2 years of living in this mobile home, my mum found out where our local MP lived. Her name was Virginia Bottomley, this woman. Her house wasn't that far from us, so my mum wrote her a letter explaining our situation, and I wrote it down on my bike and posted it through her letterbox. Shortly after that, the council rehomed us into a 3-bedroom council house in somewhere called Hazelmere. I never found out if Virginia had anything to do with that, but if she did, thank you. And if she didn't, I'll take it back. You're not having it. By the time we moved into our new house, I was 12 and already totally off the rails. Soon after we moved in, I remember finding a bottle of black spray paint and spray painted "I hate my mum" in huge black letters across my bedroom wall. I also spray painted a massive crucifix. I'm not too sure why I did that. I think I was just feeling a bit melodramatic. I got in trouble with the police. I ran away from school. I basically went feral. Anyway, that's a story for another time. Despite all of us eventually finding our feet again, sadly our family is still deeply fractured to this day, and there are wounds that will no doubt never heal. However, what I'm about to say may surprise you. I'm glad my parents divorced. Because the truth is, despite everything, all the pain we suffered and all the division it caused, I'm glad it happened. My mum and dad are two of the most polar opposite people I've ever met, and as they've grown older and become more set in their ways and I suppose more galvanized in their opinions, it's only highlighted the fact that it could never have worked between them. Besides, like I said, it awakened me to all the chaos and fragility of life. Now that we're older with 2 kids of my own, I can't imagine how hard it would have been for them to see it all fall apart and that bubble of theirs burst. I know they'll both watch this video, so I want them both to know that I'll always love them dearly, and I'm sorry that it ended the way that it did. But despite everything, you gave us the best childhood we could have dreamt of, so thank you for that. If one day my boys look back at their 6-year-olds playing and are reminded of the childhood we gave them, I can only hope they look back with the same love and fondness for it all that I do. This story may not have a happy ending, but nonetheless, it's been a story I wouldn't change any part of. Anyway, happy birthday, Grayson.